We now join our regularly scheduled program, already in progress.
Demolishing Palestinian Authority President Yasser Arafat's Gaza Strip headquarters, and by firing rockets at Arafat's West Bank compound, where he's been trapped under siege since December. Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon said he might release Arafat and allow him to attend an Arab League summit later this month, when Arab leaders are expected to discuss a Saudi proposal for Middle East peace. Wading back into all this, U.S. envoy Anthony Zinni on his way to try to broker a ceasefire. Twice before, Zinni's peacemaking efforts have failed. His Just Say No to Violence message almost completely ignored. The chance of success this time, a long shot at best.
Israel has given international peacemaking and international diplomacy a second chance and a third chance. Israel has gone the extra mile for a ceasefire.
More like baby steps. Sharon has dropped his long-standing demand for a 7-day ceasefire as a precondition for agreeing to ceasefire talks. Palestinians say that more than anything else, Sharon's gestures are intended to please the United States. Before Zinni and Vice President Dick Cheney arrive here later this week, the U.S. has become increasingly critical of Sharon's hardline stance. Despite the softening of words, Israel continues to pummel the Palestinians with airstrikes and armored invasions of Palestinian refugee camps.
The Israelis are doing all their best to damage these initiatives and these efforts in order to keep this cycle of violence going on.
Round and round it goes. Palestinian militants are promising to retaliate for Israel's retaliation. Revenge for revenge for revenge. David Hawkins, CBS News, Tel Aviv.
The 6-month anniversary of the September 11th attacks will be marked from coast to coast, and also this morning at the White House. President Bush will be joined by victims' families, members of Congress, and more than 100 foreign ambassadors. And in Lower Manhattan, dusk will bring the lighting of an extraordinary memorial. Randall Pinkston has more.
Simultaneously, artists, architects, and engineers envisioned a luminous memorial and collaborated to create this. 2 super powerful beams of light designed to rise over ground zero, visible even to the space shuttle. The beams are created by 2 platforms of 44 light fixtures. In each fixture, a $1,200 xenon bulb donated by GE. The local utility company is donating electric power.
One thing that I think will be very beautiful about it is the way that the atmosphere and the weather conditions will change when it appears every night, and as the hours go by, it'll seem to be somehow alive.
The first idea for a light display came a few days after September 11th. Initially, it was intended to inspire rescue workers. But as hope for survivors dimmed and then disappeared, the lights evolved into a memorial, a tribute in light. The lights will go on, weather permitting, from dusk until 11 p.m. for the next month. The memorial was designed to be temporary and designed to evoke the spirit of the dozens of candlelight vigils to the victims. And while evoking what was there, the beams will again remind us what was lost. Randall Pinkston, CBS News, New York.
For almost 1 million Americans who use wheelchairs, it's often the little things in life that make the greatest difference. For more than 50 years, Paralyzed Veterans of America has been leading the way in making America barrier-free for people with spinal cord injury or disease. I'm proud to work with Paralyzed Veterans of America to bring architecture-friendly solutions to the home and to the workplace. You too can help. Call toll-free 1-866-USA for PVA.
Since September 11th, the Salvation Army has done a phenomenal job at Ground Zero. They've served over 2 million meals on site, provided clothing, shelter, and counseling to rescue workers and victims' families, and so much more. On behalf of all New York City firefighters, I just want to say thank you. Like us, whenever people are in need, the Salvation Army is always on duty.
The Pentagon and World Trade Center have been hit. People across the country are mourning the loss of thousands.
For the Afghan people caught in the middle of an international crisis.
The people here are in such bad shape.
The onset of winter threatens catastrophe for people already.
Women and children are the most vulnerable to hunger and disease.
Their misery intensified by empty stomachs, sickness, and nowhere to go but here.
CARE is distributing food, water, shelter supplies.
Without this immediate help, things look grim.
Relief agencies like CARE are reaching those in need.
Did you ever have chicken pox as a child? For millions of Americans, the virus can come back as a painful rash called shingles, and after shingles as postherpetic neuralgia, an even more painful nerve condition. I don't have shingles or PHN, but I've talked to patients who do, and they describe it as electric shocks and fire under the skin. That's why I've teamed up with the Visiting Nurse Associations of America to urge patients and caregivers to learn more. There's no cure yet, but today there is hope.
It's 10 past the hour. More than 300 family members of September 11th victims and 100 foreign ambassadors joined President Bush at the White House a little later this morning, exactly 6 months after the attacks on America. CBS's Mark Knoller has our report.
Well over 1,000 people will gather on the South Lawn here at the White House later this morning to hear the president's thoughts as the nation marks the 6-month anniversary of 9/11. But barely a day goes by that President Bush does not reflect on what the nation has been through since that day.
You know, we're passing through extraordinary times here in America. History has called this great nation into action. When we look back at history, 6 months, it's a pretty short period of time in the war against terror. And we've accomplished a lot. But there's still dangerous missions left ahead. People say, well, how long is this going to last? And the answer is for however long it takes to make sure America is secure.
That could be the president's mantra about the war, however long it takes.
I have said from the beginning of this war that this is going to be a long, difficult struggle. People say, well, the hard part's over with. And my answer is no, it's not. We're just beginning.
There are moments about the last 6 months indelibly imprinted in our memories. For White House Chief of Staff Andrew Card, it took place on the morning of 9/11 in a classroom of a Florida elementary school that Mr. Bush was visiting.
Obviously, it's when I walked up to the president in Florida and whispered in his ear, a second plane hit the second tower, America is under attack. And a lot changed that moment. A lot changed for America when the attack happened.
But Card says that doesn't apply to President Bush.
I don't think it changed him very much. What we have seen is a spotlight shining on him a little more brightly than we saw prior to September 11th. And that spotlight showed that the president has resolve.
Some say the events of the last 6 months changed America's perception of George W. Bush. But in an interview for the Saturday Early Show, the White House Chief of Staff minimizes that view.
I think we're seeing the real George Bush, and those of us who have known him for a long time are not surprised by what we are seeing today.
We stand strong against evil abroad. I mean, we are standing strong and determined and united against evil. The price of freedom is high, no doubt about it. But the price of freedom is never too high as far as I'm concerned.
Despite the grievous losses that America has suffered, the president repeatedly looks for a silver lining.
I truly believe that out of this evil that was done on us in September 11th will come some great good. We're finding strength at home through the gathering momentum of millions of acts of kindness and generosity and goodness. I mean, if you really want to stand squarely in the face of evil, help a neighbor in need, mentor a child, help a shut-in, support your schools.
I think September 11th opened the eyes of the American people to President Bush, but they also opened the eyes of the American people to the United States.
And to the reality of America at war.
We fight a war, a real war, to protect our homeland by bringing terrorists to justice.
In speech after speech, Mr. Bush speaks of the nation at war, but he has never asked Congress to enact a declaration of war.
Well, there is unity in America that the United States is doing what is right, and the president is leading the effort in the right way. So I don't think a declaration of war is necessary.
The Constitution says only Congress can declare war, but Chief of Staff Card says this is different.
A declaration of war would normally be against a nation. We have a war against terrorism, and terrorism is such that we have to fight those parasites no matter what host they invade.
But if the next phase of the war involves an attack on Iraq, there are some members of Congress who say there first must be a declaration of war. Mark Knoller, CBS News, the White House.
At the Pentagon today, Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld hosts military leaders from the coalition fighting terrorism. He'll take them through the construction zone, where work is progressing so quickly that the head of the rebuilding project predicts workers will be at their desks where the plane hit by September 11th. That the Pentagon's wound is healing so well is thanks in part to the people of a small Midwestern town. Maureen Maher has their story.
The town of Ellettsville, Indiana, population 3,800, sits atop some of the richest deposits of limestone in the country. Limestone is the bedrock upon which this part of Indiana has built its livelihood and its reputation. For more than 150 years now, people in these parts have been cutting and carving their great blocks of limestone and shipping them east and north and south and west to build the country's great cities. The Empire State Building in New York is built of Indiana limestone. So is the Capitol and the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. Much of that stone came from here, the Bybee Stone Company in Ellettsville. Will Bybee is the president of Bybee Stone.
What do you think makes a building that's made out of limestone special? Why is it different?
I think just one simple word, it's lasting.
Limestone is meant to last for hundreds of years. But September 11th shattered many of our notions of permanence. Not in Ellettsville. Here, they still believe in the lasting nature of stone. These days at Bybee Stone, more than 100 skilled craftsmen, stone cutters, and carvers are hard at work, cutting enough limestone to rebuild the damaged Pentagon, block by block. Around here, it's called Job 306.
Over the next few months, workers will cut, carve, and plane 2.5 million pounds of Indiana limestone to rebuild the Pentagon. For these artisans, Job 306 is more than just a chance to show off their craft. It's an opportunity to help heal the scars of a wounded nation. When you look at this, you see 306. Does it have a different meaning to you now, knowing that it's going to such a special place?
Yeah, it does, and it has a lot of meaning to the guys in this plant. They get to do something very positive for a very horrible situation, and I think everybody feels good about that.
And there's a different attitude towards this job. I mean, it stands for a lot more than just normal business, just normal paycheck.
Sean Burkett is a Marine Corps reservist when he's not hauling 150-ton blocks of Indiana limestone.
This has got a little bit more emotion that goes into each piece that comes out of here, I believe.
What does it stand for?
America can't be held back, won't be held back.
Gerald Arthur and his son James worked side by side at Bybee Stone. Now, with Job 306, they also share a piece of history.
Did you feel like you wished you could do something, that you could help in some way?
Yeah. Well, I thought it was great that we could help put it back together, you know, and that way we'd have part in it too, you know, and doing the work.
When the first shipment of limestone was loaded on a truck bound for Washington in December, it included a stone panel signed by the workers here. Gerald Arthur, James Arthur, Sean Burkett, and 100 others who wanted the country to know that they have done their part. Gulf War veteran Guy Kane has put his name in to fight in Afghanistan.
And you're ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
And in the meantime, this is what you do.
This is how I combat. I combat with fighting them back. Fight fire with fire. They knock ours down, we're going to build it back better and stronger.
In Ellettsville, Indiana, they believe in the lasting nature of stone. It is their bedrock, their foundation, their faith. It is more than pieces of stone that the people of Ellettsville are cutting and carving and shipping so carefully half a continent away. Part of Indiana itself is being sent east. Strong, steady, and determined to make us whole.
Attention, Americans without prescription drug coverage. Don't wait to find out if Medicare will ever cover all your prescriptions or if your employer will ever offer you coverage. Get the People's Prescription Plan today. Members have already saved over $180 million on prescription drugs, eyewear, hearing aids, and more at over 50,000 locations nationwide. Your household is covered for just $7.95 a month with no limits on use, so the savings can really add up. And as a special offer, when you call today, you pay just $2.95 for your first month, a savings of $5 off the regular price. Plus, your satisfaction is guaranteed or your money back. There are no claim forms or waiting periods. You save right on the spot. So don't wait for the politicians or your employer to decide if they're going to help you with prescription costs. Save now with the People's Prescription Plan.
Call 1-800-854-7200 for free information on the People's Prescription Plan. 1-800-854-7200. Call now.
Did you know that the powerful heating medicine in Bengay increases blood flow at the site of application to help ease your aches and pains? Did you also know that Bengay's been scientifically proven to increase range of motion, decrease muscle and arthritis pain, and improve flexibility? And Ultra Strength Bengay has 3 powerful pain-relieving medicines, more than any other leading brand, and that adds up to fast, powerful pain relief. Ultra Strength Bengay, the power you want, the relief you need.
Tomorrow is today, time to change. Make it happen, create it, take it, shape it. Your life belongs to you, do it real, make it true. It's your life, feel it right.
Slim Fast, smart, well-balanced nutrition to help you eat well and manage your weight.
It's your life, feel it right. It's your life, feel it right.
It's 21 past the hour. Top stories on Up to the Minute. Zimbabweans who waited hours in line get another chance to vote today. A judge ordered the polls to stay open for a third day in the most bitterly contested presidential election of Robert Mugabe's 22 years in power. Homeland Security Chief Tom Ridge could unveil as soon as tomorrow a 5-stage color-coded alert system to explain levels of terrorist danger to the public. And Arthur Andersen, facing possible indictment and losing employees and clients, is reported near agreement to sell some or all of its operations to rival Deloitte and Touche Tamatsu. The New York Times says a deal could come this week. Checking your forecast this Monday morning, rain and mountain snow move into the Pacific Northwest and northern Rockies. The Southwest stays dry. Light rain and snow in the upper Midwest. Light showers over the Ozarks and the western Gulf Coast. The East Coast dries out under high pressure. High temperatures today 20s from the northern plains to northern New England. 30s and 40s from the Rockies to the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. 50s from the Northwest through the Ozarks and North Carolina. 60s and some 70s across the South. In sports this morning, chances are you're going to see a lot of these things. Grids like this morning. At the office, the NCAA has announced the 64 teams that will vie for its basketball crown as March Madness begins. Top seed in the South. No surprise here, Duke coming in first for the record 5th straight year. They'll take on number 16, Winthrop. In the Midwest, Kansas, Go Hawks, took the top spot for the first time since 1998. Kansas lost Oklahoma Sunday for the Big 12 title. They'll play Holy Cross in round 1. The Sooners are ranked 2nd in the West. They'll play University of Illinois Chicago, ranked 15th. Topping the Sooners and leading the West is Cincinnati. It's the school's first #1 ranking. They last played Marquette on Saturday. The Bearcats will face Boston U. Marquette, ranked 5th in the East, will play Tulsa. Are you with us? Finally, another first-timer tops the East, Maryland. The Terps lost to NC State on Saturday. The Wolfpack is ranked 7th in the East and will play Michigan State. Well, who lost out? Gonzaga made the big dance but doesn't like its place in line. The Bulldogs were ranked 6th but expected higher. Missing entirely from this year's tourney are Georgetown, Ball State, and Butler. And we have your sports. Stay with us.
Hi, this is Mark Anthony Farad, recording artist, actors, and athletes against drunk driving. Music is one of the most important things in my life, but nothing is more important than life itself. When you do drink and drive, you risk not only your life, but the lives of everybody on the road. So choose a designated driver. Friends don't let friends drive drunk.
Liz was 4 when she learned how to wash herself. But some mornings she's so weak, her daughter Jenny has to do it for her. Liz has multiple sclerosis, an unpredictable neurological disease that strikes young adults, many with children. The National MS Society helps families learn to live with MS. They count on us. Can we count on you?
Every day,
G'day, Russ.
more tax professionals are embracing IRS e-file.
Night, Russ.
So instead of printing your income tax returns, they're sending them electronically.
Take it easy, Russ.
E-file is accurate, secure,
Good night, Russ.
and faster than paper, which means you get your refund back in half the time.
Russ, don't work all night.
So insist that you're a tax professional, use IRS e-file.
Happy anniversary, Russ.
And please, help Russ get home to his wife.
Hi, I'm Dorinda Washington, and this is my husband, Craig. Every year we walk in March of Dimes Walk America to help give babies a fighting chance. Our son Justin was born 4 months premature and struggled to survive in a NICU, just like this one.
Thanks to the March of Dimes medical advances in specialized neonatal intensive care, Justin survived and thrived.
Please give babies a fighting chance. Join March of Dimes Walk America and be a hero for the tiniest babies. Call 1-800-525-WALK and register today.
Andy Rooney of 60 Minutes has spent more time in the past week reading and thinking about David Letterman and Ted Koppel than most people spend watching them.
The papers have been full of it this week. David Letterman may leave CBS and replace Ted Koppel and Nightline at ABC. ABC is worried because surveys show that while about as many people watch Koppel as watch Letterman, Letterman's audience is younger, and that's what advertisers want. We're sympathetic because surveys show that young people don't watch 60 Minutes either. I've taken my own unofficial survey. The average IQ of the people who watch Nightline and 60 Minutes is 34 points higher than the people who don't watch. My survey also indicates that the people who watch David Letterman and Jay Leno stay up 2 hours and 9 minutes later than people who go to bed at a reasonable hour. The reason they stay up late is 37% of them don't get up and go to work in the morning because they don't have jobs. They don't have money to buy the stuff in the commercials either. The people who stay up late to watch Ted Koppel don't have to get up early because they're the bosses. They can come to work any damn time they feel like it. David Letterman's show is on at 11:30, but he tapes it at 5:30 in the afternoon. The reason is simple. Letterman is smarter than 94% of his audience, and at 11:30 at night, he's home watching Nightline. If CBS loses David Letterman, maybe they could replace him with congressional hearings. The best thing on television recently has been those Enron hearings. Jeffrey Skilling, former head of Enron, was a witness. If someone says they don't remember, you can't argue with him.
In my recollection, all of my recollection is my only recollection. It was my recollection that vaguely recollect going to Joe and saying, don't recall that specifically. Don't recall that. My recollection that I don't recall the exact date, but I do specifically recall the discussion. I just recall my...
Skilling knows we don't like accountants, too, so he kept saying he wasn't one.
Quite frankly, I will state right now that I'm not an accountant. To be quite frank, I am not an accountant. Quite frankly, again, I'm not an accountant. Quite frankly, I am not an accountant. Quite frankly, I don't know. I'm not an accountant.
I never believe anyone is being frank who keeps saying frankly. Skilling may be innocent, but it seems wrong that a shoplifter who steals a $10 scarf can go to prison when the president of a bank can steal $10 million with a bookkeeping trick and never get locked up. And one last statistic in my survey, the average age of prisoners in the United States is 33, so they don't watch 60 Minutes either.
Andy Rooney. Of course, the most intelligent audience of all is watching right now. So Dave, wake up. This is CBS News Up to the Minute.
Experience you can trust. CBS News.
Good morning. It's Monday, March 11th. From CBS News in New York City, I'm Melissa McDermott. Here's what's happening. This is a day of prayers and memorials. 6 months since terrorists crashed commercial jetliners into the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and a rural Pennsylvania field. And for victims' relatives, a day filled with painful memories. At this hour, at the ruins of the World Trade Center, Ground Zero work continues around the clock to recover victims' remains. More than 2,800 people died here. Most are still missing. CBS News correspondent Manuel Gallegos reports.
They are pictures from September 11th we've never seen before. Firefighters in Tower 1 of the World Trade Center trying to get people out. And then suddenly, the tower next door comes crashing down. Almost 6 months later, on Sunday night, another body is found in the rubble where the towers used to stand.
There's nothing we can do to bring back those we lost, but we have to make sure that we remember.
Recently, New York leaders announced 2 memorials for the 6-month anniversary. The first, a restoration of this sphere that sat in front of the World Trade Center. Monday morning, it will be placed in a park across from where the building stood. The other memorial, a dazzling display of light. At dusk, twin beams will shoot a mile up into the Manhattan sky. The tribute in light will shine for 32 nights. Washington will also hold memorials on Monday.
Thousands of lives were suddenly ended by evil.
President Bush will lead a service at the White House in the morning. The Pentagon will remember their victims in the evening. And besides the body that's just been recovered, last week 2 police officers were found here in the rubble. One of them was on his last day of work before retirement. Manuel Gallegos, CBS News, New York.
Coordinated strikes blamed on Osama bin Laden's al-Qaeda network killed more than 3,000 people in total September 11th. Even now, bin Laden's whereabouts remain unknown. Inside Afghanistan, several hundred U.S. troops have now been moved off the front lines in the mountains near Gardez, turning the battle to destroy pockets of bin Laden's al-Qaeda disciples over to B-52 bombers and Afghan forces. CBS News correspondent Alan Pizzi reports from Kabul.
Rotors whipping the cold air, the helicopters came in from the mountains in a steady stream. And when they landed, there poured forth another stream. 400 dirty, battle-weary, and glad to be safe American soldiers back at Bagram Air Base after a week of hunting and fighting al-Qaeda and the Taliban.
How was it? It's more fun than words could possibly express.
This is the fun he left behind. Airstrikes, explosions. The al-Qaeda forces who have not been eliminated have been driven into holes and caves. The job of mopping up is risky and nerve-wracking.
Short, don't go in, stay back. Last guy, stay back.
And many have come under fire. 20-year-old Private Axelon from Whitehall, New York was hit and knocked down.
Sergeant Lopez grabbed me, dragged me down the hill. Tried telling me, I was all right.
The bullet turned out to be lodged in his flak jacket. Small wonder that most of the soldiers were too tired to do more than stagger to a place where they could drop their packs.
Feels good to be back.
And once they'd relaxed, time to reflect on a week of cold, thin air and enemy fire.
It's just like a training exercise. Doesn't seem any different. The only difference is they're trying to kill you.
And for 19-year-old Private Nicholas Waters, straight out of basic training,
it wasn't as bad as I expected it to be.
Nearly 1,000 American and other coalition troops are still in the mountains. Military spokesmen say Operation Anaconda is not over, merely entering what they call a new phase. So the troops left behind won't be coming back just yet. Alan Pizzi, CBS News, Kabul.
Vice President Dick Cheney has arrived in London at the start of a major attempt by the Bush administration to gain agreement on the next stage of the war on terrorism. He'll meet today with British Prime Minister Tony Blair. Cheney is set to visit 9 Arab nations plus Turkey and Israel. Anthony Zinni returns to the Middle East this week. Secretary of State Colin Powell tells CBS News the retired Marine Corps general will fight his way through the difficult diplomatic issues in hopes of securing a truce.
We're not going to allow acts of violence to stop General Zinni from doing his work. And I'm pleased that Prime Minister Sharon a couple of days ago indicated that his requirement for days of quiet are being set aside so that we can get this going.
Israel's Prime Minister Ariel Sharon says he now favors ending the 3-month blockade on Yasser Arafat in the West Bank town of Ramallah, but won't call off the army offensive against militants. Overnight, Israeli forces entered one West Bank town. Scattered clashes have been reported. In Africa, Zimbabwe's highest court says voting in the presidential election can continue this morning for a third day, but it's unclear if polling stations will be open. CBS News correspondent Mark Phillips reports is there.
The challenger, Morgan Tsvangirai.
Oh, thanks.
He's hoping for the best birthday present he's ever had, victory. But it seems this vote is being organized to make receiving that gift almost impossible. Tsvangirai, the labor leader turned politician who has mounted the first serious challenge ever to Zimbabwe President Robert Mugabe's 22-year rule, had no difficulty casting his own vote. But his supporters had much more trouble. For the second day of this vote, seemingly interminable, slow-moving lines formed at polling stations in the areas where Tsvangirai is known to have much of his support. Many standing in the hot sun all day after lining up before dawn.
We've been here since 4 o'clock, but up to now we are sick and tired of standing in the line.
The suspicion is that the government is deliberately trying to frustrate the opposition vote. This is an imperfect vote being held in less than fair conditions. The enthusiasm of the voters seems beyond question, and given the obstacles being put in their way, it has to be. Particularly in the countryside, there aren't nearly enough impartial observers to monitor the vote. Some think Robert Mugabe's claim today that he has swept the rural vote and therefore the election curious, particularly since the vote hasn't been counted yet.
Mugabe has never had a more perfect environment for rigging an election than he has now.
And barring a miracle, Morgan Tsvangirai's birthday present will have to wait. Mark Phillips, CBS News, Harare.
Up in orbit, the 7 astronauts aboard the shuttle Columbia today are packing for home. Last week, they completed a record-tying 5 spacewalks to upgrade the 12-year-old Hubble Space Telescope. Columbia is scheduled to land Tuesday. Of course, that is weather permitting. Isn't that pretty? We're back in 2 minutes. This is CBS News Up to the Minute.
It's tough not having a car. With immediate claim service, Geico gets you back on the road fast. Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Accidents can happen anytime. That's why Geico's here 24 hours a day, every day. Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Triumph over tragedy, 6 months after September 11th. A look at how our country is healing its wounds. Coming up on The Early Show with Bryant Gumbel and Jane Clayson.
Want to keep an eye on your money? Now there are 3 great places to get the best in financial news. On CBS Television, CBS Radio, and on the web at cbs.marketwatch.com. Follow your portfolio, and when you're ready, trades are just a click away. CBS News, your eye on the market.
It's 40 past the hour. This morning, we look at just a few ways our lives have changed in the past 6 months. Take airport security. The changes go far beyond cockpit doors and passenger screening. Last week in Charlotte, North Carolina, federal agents arrested 66 people who allegedly lied to get airport jobs and security clearance. More on this from Stephanie Lambadakis.
The nationwide crackdown on illegal airport workers swept through Charlotte, North Carolina's airport in the middle of a busy Friday travel day.
We have people whose identities are based upon fraudulent documents and fraudulent representations. We don't know really for sure who they are.
The Charlotte airport sweep is only the latest of many around the country. Boston, Virginia's Dulles Airport, Atlanta, Miami, Salt Lake City, Portland, Oregon, and Seattle have already been targeted. Federal officials admit to singling out immigrant workers as possible security risks. Although none has been linked to terrorism so far, unions say the sweeps are creating a climate of fear among their members.
They don't know when they leave home whether they're going to be caught up in a sweep and all of a sudden find themselves arrested and in some cases deported.
And the raids aren't over yet. Actions are planned for airports in San Diego and Los Angeles, which has been shut down 6 times in the last 2 weeks because of security scares.
We need to tighten up. And initially, the people who are getting caught are the people who are working illegally. We have no choice.
Replacing the workers is a huge priority. At New York's Kennedy Airport, where 64% of the screeners are immigrants, a new program is being launched. Retired police officers will now walk the airline security beat. The drive to shore up security will only intensify given the government's November 19th deadline for staffing checkpoints with federal workers.
Even though 6 months have elapsed since the terrorist attacks, security experts are still scrambling to plug holes, making hurried fixes they hope will last. Stephanie Lambadakis, CBS News, the Justice Department.
Many Americans have foregone travel since September 11th to spend their leisure time at home, a trend that has home entertainment products flying off store shelves. Alexis Christoforous of CBS Market Watch has that.
In a cool retail market, electronics are hot. And right now, prices are lower than ever. Traditional TVs are selling for as little as $189. A 47-inch high-definition television as low as $1,900. And while other retailers struggle through the recession, business is booming at consumer electronics discounters like Circuit City and Best Buy.
Unfortunately, though it's a recession, it plays into one of our strengths, which is certainly the whole home theater experience.
As more Americans opt for stay-at-home entertainment, Best Buy says sales of digital products like televisions, DVDs, and camcorders will make up 23% of overall sales this quarter. Best Buy rival Circuit City saw a 10% jump in December sales, although it acknowledges the current quarter numbers are disappointing.
Digital and high-definition TV is selling. In spite of the fact that still only a fairly limited amount of programming is out there.
Digital televisions are flying off the shelves here at Best Buy thanks to big deals, including cash rebates, 0% financing. They'll even throw in a lounge chair or free DVD. But how can they do that and not sacrifice the bottom line?
We're pretty good at monitoring our inventory turns, buying product just in time so that we get it delivered to our warehouse just in time so we can sell it and therefore pay the vendor before we even have to pay interest on it.
We're able to have great deals with the manufacturers, and we're able to pass that along to consumers.
And these stores really make their money on those little extras, like store credit cards with typically higher interest rates. And
consumer electronics retailers make a lot of profit from those warranties and service features that they offer when they sell a lot of these consumer electronics items.
Currently, just 2% of American homes have digital televisions. But as broadcasters begin to make it more available, that number is expected to grow, giving electronics retailers an even larger pool of potential profits. Alexis Christoforous, CBS Market Watch, New York.
On an unexpected front, the attacks on America have also had repercussions in the fight against drug traffickers. Cynthia Bowers has that story.
The war on terror is apparently turning America's highways into a much busier battlefield in the war on drugs.
This year, we have already, in 2002, seized more in both monies and narcotics than we seized all of last year.
Along Interstate 80, which stretches 3,000 miles from New Jersey to California, records for drug and money seizures are falling almost daily. Statistics aren't in for every state, but for the 4 that span nearly half the highway's length, the numbers are striking. Ohio State Police have seized almost half as many drugs in the first 2 months of this year as were seized in all of last, up 170% in just the last 6 weeks. In Iowa, the $5 million in drugs rounded up so far in 2002 have already eclipsed last year's total. Nebraska police have seen a 6-fold increase in drugs confiscated over 2001. And in Wyoming, felony drug arrests have more than quadrupled over the last year. Officials believe in the wake of September 11th and the increased scrutiny of luggage at airports, train stations, and bus depots, smugglers are reluctant to use public transportation for illegal transactions.
Those people are intent to move those narcotics and money back and forth across the country. You know, I think they believe they're not going to encounter quite the security on the interstates as they might in going through an airport.
It's too early to tell if this trend will continue, but law enforcement says in the war on drugs, even a temporary victory signals a move in the right direction. Cynthia Bowers, CBS News, Chicago.
This is an important message to our nation's 25 million veterans. We are trying to contact all honorably discharged U.S. veterans of the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, National Guard, and Coast Guard who served our country during wartime or peacetime. If you are a veteran of one of these military branches between the ages of 45 and 79, or the spouse or widow of one, call this toll-free number now to find out about important benefits you are entitled to apply for. These benefits are available only through Veterans Life Insurance Company. Because of your honorably discharged status, you can receive vets-only rates on your choice of $5,000 or $10,000 of supplemental life insurance. In addition, you'll receive a benefits eligibility package that includes complete details on these insurance benefits and optional accidental death protection you are also eligible to apply for. Plus, when you call now, you'll get this Veterans Burial Benefits Update absolutely free that explains your entitlement to government benefits. Important. Our nation's veterans need to know about their benefit eligibility. If you are one of our nation's veterans from any of these branches of the military, this message is for you. Veterans Life is dedicated to providing veterans with good quality life insurance. You are entitled to apply for these benefits at affordable rates for which only you as a veteran or the spouse or widow of one can qualify. Don't miss this opportunity. Your satisfaction is guaranteed or your money back. So don't wait. Call this toll-free number now for your benefits package.
Veterans, to respond to this important message about your benefits eligibility, call toll-free 1-800-449-6161 now for free information and your Veterans Burial Benefits Update. 1-800-449-6161. That's 1-800-449-6161. Call now.
I love being a paramedic. I love helping people. But I'd get to the call, and I was too overweight. I'd feel like I had to use the oxygen for myself. It was like carrying a sandbag around my waist. I've tried other diets. The Slim Fast plan really works. The website lays it all out for you. It's easy. You can take it anywhere. It's right there. The shakes are really good for me. Slim Fast has the protein and carbs that I need. I feel more physically fit. The energy is a big help. I can do my job better. Knowing that I've helped somebody, it's the best feeling in the world.
Slim Fast. It's your life. Feed it right.
6 months after the 9/11 attacks, tonight on the CBS Evening News.
As you're up to the minute forecast, widespread rain and mountain snow move into the Pacific Northwest and Northern Rockies. A weak storm system brings light rain and snow to the upper Midwest. Light showers develop over the Ozarks and western Gulf Coast. High temps today, 20s from the northern plains to northern New England, 30s and 40s from the Rockies to the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, 50s from the Northwest through the Ozarks and North Carolina, 60s and 70s across the South. Hundreds of thousands of people lost power when a windy winter storm tore through the upper Midwest over the weekend. The wind was so strong in Rochester, Minnesota, that it blew cars off roads into the ditches. Some people had to just abandon their cars in blizzard-like conditions until they could get help. Now, look at this, the surf on Lake Erie near Buffalo, New York, where the same storm blew down trees and power lines as well. From coast to coast, a storm of a different kind. The storm of allegations of sexual abuse against some priests is still sending shockwaves through the Catholic Church. Mika Brzezinski has the latest on the accusations and the response.
Child abuse is not only criminal, but it's seriously sinful.
In Los Angeles, the nation's largest Catholic archdiocese, parishioners heard a letter from their cardinal, Roger Mahoney, an attempt to reassure the public the church is addressing the problem of priests who have abused children.
Please know that child abuse will be dealt with promptly and responsibly whenever it emerges.
As reports circulated that as many as 12 priests have been removed because of sexual abuse charges, parishioners seem to welcome the unprecedented letter.
I thought it was very positive, and I'm glad to see the church taking the action it is now.
10,000 rapes is too damn much.
The release of the letter may be an attempt to avoid the fate of Boston's Cardinal Bernard Law, who faced new calls this weekend for his resignation. Critics charge the Cardinal knowingly let priests who admitted to sexually abusing children be assigned to new parishes. Dozens of priests have been accused. Still, the Cardinal continued to resist stepping down.
I don't have the answers for you today for all of the things that I have heard. But I think if I were to tell you that I did, you would have the reason to turn your back on me.
The ripple effects threaten to engulf church leaders around the country.
I am truly and deeply sorry.
Friday, Bishop Anthony O'Connell of Palm Beach, Florida, resigned over reports of sexual abuse 25 years ago. And the Archdiocese of St. Louis has removed 2 priests in as many weeks over accusations they abused children. Author Richard Sipe worries the revelations threaten the foundations of the church itself.
I think it's significant what's happening. I think it's confusing what's happening. I don't know that it's fair what's happening. But I do know that something is going to happen and that it's rocking the foundation of the church and rocking the foundations of the priesthood.
And the scandal could also end up costing the Catholic Church many millions of dollars in settlement costs and legal fees. Mika Brzezinski, CBS News, New York.
The question in this morning's Eye on America, in the effort to make amends, are some innocent priests becoming victims as well? Byron Pitts has our report on that.
2, 4, 6, 8. Cardinal Law, you spoke too late.
Cash settlement or not, the casualties in this conflict over sex and sin in the Catholic Church are obvious.
No one understands the years of pain.
And the numbers are growing.
They were supposed to take care of me, and they didn't. They abused me.
Just this week in Philadelphia, John Quinn claims a Catholic priest molested him as a boy, and the diocese paid him $60,000 to keep quiet.
I'm taking my power back.
Sunday, Boston's Cardinal Bernard Law had his sermon interrupted by a man who claimed he too was molested.
I'd like Bernard Law to know that the victims have faces.
And now the attacks are coming from inside the clergy.
What I think of Cardinal Law is I think that he has lost all credibility among his priests because we know that he is not there for us.
Father George Spagnolia is one of 10 priests recently suspended by Cardinal Law over allegations of child molestation.
Let me now say, I have done nothing.
Spagnolia's threatened to appeal all the way to the Vatican in Rome.
There's no justice here.
Arguing he was denied due process. He compares his case to similar allegations made against the late Cardinal Joseph Bernardine of Chicago, who was falsely accused in the 90s.
What's happening can take on the quality of a witch hunt.
Richard Sipe has written books on pedophilia and the priesthood.
Since things weren't handled in a timely way, they're coming out in a very messy way, and that's going to continue.
It's been a few weeks now since Father Spagnolia was dismissed by Cardinal Law. He still denies the sin, but he was forced to admit to a secret.
My sexual orientation is homosexual.
Spagnolia was outed after admitting to a lie. He first told reporters he'd been celibate, but later admitted he'd had relationships with 2 men.
To critics and to some supporters who would say, if you lied once, you are simply a liar.
Mm-hmm. Not true.
Whatever he says, Spagnolia admits he is now a casualty of this war within the church. He's moved out of the rectory, spends his days on long walks with his Bible and his regrets, wondering what will happen to him and to his beloved Catholic Church. In Boston, this is Byron Pitts for Eye on America.
That's so gay.
Homo!
You faggot! So you're a queer, aren't you?
Fag! Queer!
Faggot! What are you, a fag?
The next time you use words like these, think about what they really mean.
was his first birthday party. This is the teddy bear I sent him. But I picked out his best gift about a year ago, when I gave him a loving mom and a dad. I haven't given him up. I've given him more.
Adoption. It's about love. LDS Family Services.
I would have given anything for some warning signs. I would have moved. I would have locked her up. I don't care if there were warning signs. I would have done whatever it took. I was never given that opportunity. A parent's not supposed to survive their children. It's not the scheme of things.
Properly inflating my tires burns less fuel and saves me money on gas. Yeah, I'm saving Mother Nature from pollution, but more importantly, she saved me $11. Ow!
Environmental defense. Get green.
By keeping my car regularly tuned, I save money on gas and repairs. That also means cleaner air. You know, feels good to help save the cash, planet.
Environmental defense. Get green. For more tips, go to getgreen.com.
Texans go to the polls tomorrow to choose Democratic candidates for U.S. Senate and governor. The governor's race is particularly heated. It pits Laredo businessman Tony Sanchez against former Attorney General Dan Morales. Sanchez leads in most polls, but as many as 45% of voters are undecided. Texas has early voting, so many people have already cast ballots. Well, if last week's California primary is any sign of what's ahead this election year, underdogs could become top dogs. California Republicans chose conservative Bill Simon, who'd been considered a long shot over the more moderate Richard Riordan. And that, as Thalia Ashuris reports, is welcome news to Democrats.
I look forward to a spirited and hard-fought campaign for governor.
This year's elections have the makings of high drama. On the national scene, nothing less than control of Congress is at stake. And it was not welcome news to Republicans when GOP Senator Fred Thompson announced that he would not seek re-election. A safe seat just became very uncertain.
The stakes are so extraordinarily high. Both houses of Congress are really tipping at the edge of a possible change in party majority.
And the party with the most seats controls the agenda. The Republican president understands that all too well.
I think it'd be a lot easier for me to accomplish what I want to accomplish with Denny Hastert as Speaker of the House of Representatives and as Trent Lott as Majority Leader of the United States Senate.
President Bush is already busily stumping for Republican candidates who, like Elizabeth Dole in North Carolina, hope photo ops like this one will carry a lot of weight with voters and make things even more difficult for Democrats.
Democrats are floundering a little bit now because they're trying to deal with a party that has a president who continues to be at a stratospheric approval rating.
Still, Republicans are not invulnerable. Take the nation's 36 gubernatorial races. Former Clinton Attorney General Janet Reno is challenging Florida's incumbent and the president's brother, Jeb Bush. And the GOP, which scored big in 1994 with a gain of 12 governorships, must defend 23 state houses this fall.
There's no doubt that Republicans are going to lose seats this year. It's just stacked up that way.
Political analysts predict that the closer we get to Election Day, the more the war on terrorism will be overshadowed by quality of life issues such as the economy and health care. Thalia Ashuris, CBS News, New York.
And we hope you elect to stay with CBS. This is CBS News Up to the Minute.
For news 24 hours a day, CBS.com on the internet and on our interactive partner, America Online at keyword CBS News.
I'm Rick Mecklenburg. Here's what's happening right now on Doppler 22 Storm Tracker.
Now on CBS News Up to the Minute. Victorious American and Allied troops are pulled from the battle zone as Operation Anaconda begins to wind down. And the Vice President's mission to fight the political war on terrorism on the 6-month anniversary of the September 11th attacks. Good morning, everyone. This is Up to the Minute. I'm Melissa McDermott. Today marks the 6-month anniversary of the worst terror attack in U.S. history, when hijacked airliners crashed into the World Trade Center towers, the Pentagon, and a field in Pennsylvania, killing more than 3,000 people and touching off America's war on terror. And that is why we fight. Half a world away in Afghanistan, Operation Anaconda has reached a crossroads. American and allied troops are being pulled from the battle zone outside the city of Gardez. Although the commander of those forces says, quote, they're being repositioned, a spokesman for the 10th Mountain Division says hundreds of soldiers are returning to Bagram Air Base outside Kabul. The major fighting is over, but the operation will continue. And Secretary of State Colin Powell says Anaconda is now a mopping up operation. Vice President Dick Cheney will mark the anniversary in London with a leader hailed in Washington as America's strongest ally in the war on terror, Prime Minister Tony Blair. It's the first stop of a 10-day mission to Europe and the Middle East for Cheney. He'll visit 9 Arab countries as well as Israel and Turkey. The goal is to maintain support for the war on terror. But that goal is complicated by the continuing bloodshed between Israel and the Palestinians. And now, a leaked report that the U.S. has a list of countries it's making contingency plans to strike with nuclear weapons and will likely cast a shadow over Cheney's mission. The report includes the so-called Axis of Evil, Iran, Iraq, North Korea, also China, Russia, and Libya, as well as Syria. CBS's Bob Orr has details.
Before setting off on his 10-day trip to Europe and the Middle East, Vice President Dick Cheney outlined his mission in simple terms.
The main reason that the president wanted me to go was to talk about the continuing war on terror.
But other issues threaten to overwhelm Cheney's trip. He hopes to rally Arab leaders to support the president's war effort and to condemn Iraq's building of weapons of mass destruction. But the Middle East demands attention. The Arab leaders are focused on a new Saudi peace plan. And as long as the fighting continues, the administration's agenda could take a back seat. Middle East expert Martin Indyk says Palestinian leader Arafat may be using the violence to make sure his cause is not ignored.
And by escalating, he makes sure that every Arab leader that Cheney talks to is going to say, don't talk to me about Iraq. We've got to do something about the Palestinian problem.
And Cheney is bracing for criticism from allies over a dramatic shift in U.S. nuclear weapons policy. A secret report leaked to newspapers says the Pentagon is developing contingency plans for nuclear strikes against 7 countries, including Iran and Iraq, in retaliation for chemical or biological attacks. Secretary of State Colin Powell says the new strategy simply reflects prudent planning to meet a changing threat.
But we are not developing brand new nuclear weapons, and we are not planning to undergo any testing. So I want to make sure we don't get the international community upset by what is essentially sound conceptual planning on the part of the administration.
Retired Marine General Zinni will arrive in the Middle East ahead of the vice president. The White House hopes that Zinni somehow can get the Israelis and the Palestinians to agree to a ceasefire so that Cheney can focus on what the Bush administration sees as the larger war to be won. Bob Orr, CBS News, the White House.
And General Zinni's peace mission comes amid more bloodshed. Israeli tanks are rumbling through a West Bank refugee camp, and military attacks are reported throughout the occupied territories. CBS's David Hawkins reports.
1,018 Palestinians, 332 Israelis. That's the 18-month death toll. In the last 10 days alone, more than 120 Palestinians and 50 Israelis have been killed. Israel retaliated for back-to-back terrorist attacks by demolishing Palestinian Authority President Yasser Arafat's Gaza Strip headquarters and by firing rockets at Arafat's West Bank compound, where he's been trapped under siege since December. Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon said he might release Arafat and allow him to attend an Arab League summit later this month, when Arab leaders are expected to discuss a Saudi proposal for Middle East peace. Wading back into all this, U.S. envoy Anthony Zinni on his way to try to broker a ceasefire. Twice before, Zinni's peacemaking efforts have failed. His just say no to violence message almost completely ignored. The chance of success this time, a long shot at best.
Israel has given international peacemaking and international diplomacy a second chance and a third chance. Israel has gone the extra mile for a ceasefire.
More like baby steps. Sharon has dropped his long-standing demand for a 7-day ceasefire as a precondition for agreeing to ceasefire talks. Palestinians say that more than anything else, Sharon's gestures are intended to please the United States. Before Zinni and Vice President Dick Cheney arrive here later this week, the U.S. has become increasingly critical of Sharon's hardline stance. Despite the softening of words, Israel continues to pummel the Palestinians with airstrikes and armored invasions of Palestinian refugee camps.
The Israelis are doing all their best to damage these initiatives and these efforts in order to keep this cycle of violence going on.
Round and round it goes. Palestinian militants are promising to retaliate for Israel's retaliation. Revenge for revenge for revenge. David Hawkins, CBS News, Tel Aviv.
The 6-month anniversary of the September 11th attacks will be marked from coast to coast and also this morning at the White House. President Bush will be joined by victims' families, members of Congress, and more than 100 foreign ambassadors. And in Lower Manhattan, dusk will bring the lighting of an extraordinary memorial. Randall Pinkston has more.
Simultaneously, artists, architects, and engineers envisioned a luminous memorial and collaborated to create this. 2 super powerful beams of light designed to rise over ground zero, visible even to the space shuttle. The beams are created by 2 platforms of 44 light fixtures. In each fixture, a $1,200 xenon bulb donated by GE. The local utility company is donating electric power.
One thing that I think will be very beautiful about it is the way that the atmosphere and the weather conditions will change when it appears every night, and as the hours go by, it'll seem to be somehow alive.
The first idea for a light display came a few days after September 11th. Initially, it was intended to inspire rescue workers. But as hope for survivors dimmed and then disappeared, the lights evolved into a memorial, a tribute in light. The lights will go on, weather permitting, from dusk until 11 p.m. for the next month. The memorial was designed to be temporary. And designed to evoke the spirit of the dozens of candlelight vigils to the victims. And while evoking what was there, the beams will again remind us what was lost. Randall Pinkston, CBS News, New York.
According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, it kills over 1,500 people every year and injures 71,000 more. Inadequate sleep has been linked to health and safety risks, even premature death. But today, new treatments are helping millions get the sleep they need. So talk to your doctor or take our free risk assessment on the web at sleepfoundation.org. Sleep deprivation. It's real